Hello and welcome to our Politics and International Relations virtual session. Today we're going to talk to you a little bit about our program, our activities, and our team, and give you a chance to see why politics matters and how politics can help you think through the small and the big questions around you. I'm Dr. Elisa Randazzo, and together with Dr. Hannah Richter, I head the Politics and International Relations subject group. Today, you'll hear from my colleagues Dr. Ben Nutt, Dr. Ignacy Torrent, and Dr. Richter at various different points in this presentation. So, without further ado, let's find out a little bit about studying politics and international relations at Hertfordshire. Politics and international relations is a very flexible and very relevant course of studies. Politics, I'm sure you've realized, is absolutely everywhere and can be found not just in the formal sphere, but also there's something political about every single aspect of life, such as culture, communication, and even language itself. With our politics and international relations degrees, you will study how politics and power work in different fields and at different levels, both nationally and globally, individual and collective. At the University of Hertfordshire, there are different ways in which you can study politics and international relations. You can study it on its own and focus on these two aspects specifically, or you can study it in combination with other subjects such as history, philosophy, and journalism. Regardless of the pathway you choose, the program gives you a grounding in the basic elements of politics and international relations, and then an increasing amount of free choice of modules as you progress through your studies. If you're interested in studying on the politics and international relations pathway without one of the other subjects, you will still be able to select some optional modules from other subjects like history and other schools like law. As a student, you will attend live lectures and workshops where you will have the opportunity to discuss and debate with your colleagues and your lecturers. All of our lectures are carried out live, but they are also recorded to make it easier to revise for assessments and exams. If you have an interest in studying a foreign language, you can also select the language module as an elective. Aside from our scheduled learning activities, we also have a number of additional activities you can get involved with, such as Model United Nations, where you can get the opportunity to play any given country in the world in a simulated version of a United Nations session, and have a go at solving some of the most pressing issues of our time, from environmental degradation to conflict to pandemic responses. We want to make sure your personal aspirations and experiences are met by our degrees, so you have the opportunity to study full time, but also to do your degree part time, to add a placement year to your degree, and even to do a year abroad at another university. Finally, we are excited to announce a new MA in International Relations, which will focus on four interrelated areas of interest in the study of international relations, that is, economics, ethics, energy, and the environment. This MA also gives you the opportunity to specialize in highly relevant and topical aspects of the study of global politics, and to do so via the full-time, part-time, with advanced methods, or sandwich route. That's the one with the placement. Please do get in touch with us if you're interested in receiving more information about the new MA. Our degrees give you the opportunity to study abroad for a year. You can spend a year studying in Tokyo or in the US, Canada, India, Australia, and many other destinations across continents. In the past few years, some of our students have, for instance, done a year abroad in California, Cyprus, and most recently in Canada. As part of your degree, you can also choose to do a work placement between your second and third year. This allows you to build networks and experience in a number of possible fields where the skills of a politics graduate are very valuable, such as media, business, NGOs, or political lobbying. In the past, our students have worked in the office of the Vice Chancellor here at the University of Hertfordshire, in the civil service, in the business sector, and in the education sector. Here you can see a spread of modules which you will be able to study across your 3 years if you study politics and international relations. In the first year, we will give you the basic tools needed to study the subject with 4 core modules. How Our Citizens in the State provides you with the basic building blocks for studying the key principles that underpin our understandings of politics, from democracy to legitimacy to representation. Anarchy, Order, and Beyond gives you an insight into the basic elements of international relations theory, the tools that we need to understand the states and interstate relations. The Art of War is a module dedicated entirely to the study of armed conflict throughout history by looking at how war was waged, why, and by whom, but also looking at ways in which war can be understood and conceptualized. Comparing political systems finally provides you with the practical tools to comparatively look at different world systems of representation and governance and look at detailed case studies coming from all over the world to understand systems like democracies, autocracies, and dictatorships. In the second year, and from this point onwards, the number of core modules are reduced so you can have a wider spread of options to choose from. Modern political philosophy provides you a conceptual way to think through some of the principles we've become familiar with in the first year, such as freedom and equality. Security and governance expands on the first year by getting you to think about how states keep themselves and their citizens safe from threats like poverty, terrorism, invasions, and even pandemics. Advanced debates in comparative political research is a methods focused module which allows you to expand the work you've done with comparative politics in the first year and to develop more advanced methods of analysis. Political history explores key milestones in international political history, like the Cold War, for instance, and their significance in shaping the current world order. We the People democratic theory in practice tells us a little bit about the many different kinds of ways we can understand democracy and the changes that the concept of democracy itself has undergone in the past few centuries. The Cold War is an optional history module offered by the history group, which uses historiography to examine the cultural, economic, and political impact of the Cold War, not just on the nations, the key nations themselves affected, but also on the wider set of nations affected by the Cold War, even the smaller states. Internet governance and politics examines the impact of the internet on domestic and international governance, from fake news to digital democracy. Westminster Under Strain is a British politics focused module which examines the British political system and some of its most contemporary challenges. Global energy politics and governance focuses on the importance of energy and on the role that energy attainment and regulation can play in international politics between states and at the level of international organizations like the European Union. The state in the 21st century examines the most important unit of analysis for international relation, which is the state, from its origin to its contemporary crisis, coming from the fragmentation that happens from below and from nationalism in particular, and from across borders with globalization and the effects of fast globalization. Last, Nation and Identity is another history optional module, examines the processes that led to the emergence of new states from the disintegration of empires during the interwar period in Europe. Finally, in the third year, your only core module is the dissertation, and you're given the chance to fully specialize in an area that interests you or that you think might help you in the world of employment after your degree. The dissertation module prepares you to develop your own project based on your interests, whatever it might be, and provides support through lectures and one-to-one supervision. Public International Law is a module that is on offer through the School of Law, and it introduces you to the role of international law in regulating the conduct of international relations. Terrorism and Security examines the phenomenon of extremism and violent dissent and looks at the causes of terrorism, the responses to it, as well as wider cultural and state framings and use of the label terrorism. Politics of the EU examines the functioning and the role of the European Union from its origins to its current forms and looks at the challenges and the opportunities that the Union has experienced throughout time. Post-colonial theory and non-Western philosophy engages with the variety of non-Western philosophical viewpoints and authors to examine alternative approaches and worldviews which challenge the hegemony of the West. International political economy explores key thinkers in global economy like Adam Smith and Karl Marx, but also reflects on the wider challenges that are caused by globalization, like poverty and inequality. International organizations explores the role and the different types of international organizations from NATO to the African Union to the International Criminal Court, to the UN with the use of practical case studies. The politics of gender allows you to think about the impact of socially constructed norms around gender on the ways in which societies function, from stereotypes to violence to marginalization of minorities. Peace building and state building explores the endeavor of building stable states after protracted conflict to see what has worked in the past 30 years and what hasn't, and to try and explain why this project has been in crisis by looking at case studies like Bosnia, Rwanda, Kosovo, and East Timor. Brexit is a module dedicated to the causes, impacts, and consequences of the Brexit referendum and the processes of negotiation with the European Union. It is an exciting and ever evolving module that will hopefully explain the processes and the stakes of the UK's exit from the EU. Finally, human rights is again a module offered by the law school and which focuses on the basis for human rights legislation in the UK and at the EU level as well. It explores fundamental rights and their interplay, including the prohibition of torture, fair trial, the right to private life, religious freedoms, and freedom of expression. If you're on a joint politics and international degree with either history, philosophy, or journalism, your degree will be split so that you will study 50% PIR modules and 50% the other chosen subject. For a full spread of the optional modules for each of those subject combinations, you can go to our website and check out the program specifications page for all the combinations. Alternatively, you can always get in touch with us via email. Throughout your studies, you will also have the opportunity to take part to the activities of a growing research group of which your lecturers are part. We are all active researchers working in the field of politics and international relations, and our research group, the Critical Humanities and International Politics Research Group, brings together our research interests and allows us to set up exciting events such as lectures and workshops and blog posts led by leading social scientists. To see what's going on, you can follow us on Twitter or access our website. The time you spend at university will certainly be very different from the experience of learning at school. This is a great opportunity to learn new skills and improve on existing ones. Our teaching and assessment methods are designed to ensure that you graduate with the widest spread of transferable skills that can be applied in various different career paths after university. Amongst several of our innovative approaches, we run wargaming simulations, we ask students to write blog posts and manifestos, to produce policy reports for international organizations, MPs or NGOs, and to produce video features and presentations. Don't worry if some of these things appear daunting or if you've never done any of it before. We have integrated skill sessions in the first year to bring you up to speed with all of these, and one-to-one supervision with academic skills tutor to enhance specific skills that you may want to work on. You can always rely on your tutors, like us, to help you improve on individual aspects of your learning. The School of Humanities, of which we are part, is also committed to offering you a level of support at a number of different teams. Whether you want to improve your skills, need support during challenging times, or just want to work on your academic progression and discuss possible future trajectories for work, you can always contact your dedicated support team. You'll be allocated a personal tutor who will follow you throughout your degree and can also rely on the school's support team and the University Wellbeing Service. Finally, we want you to feel at ease and enjoy your time learning at university. Our small cohort size allows us to keep a personal, supporting learning environment and a strong rapport with all of our students. As I mentioned before, starting university can be an exciting but also a daunting moment in your life. Regardless of how you did in your A-levels or your school results, we are here to support you. So if you come to us with great A-levels, that's great. We can help you build and add to your skills. If not, then don't worry. The support we offer allows you to reach your academic success regardless of your school achievements. Even though you may not be thinking about your future career at the moment, it is worthwhile spending a moment to think about how your degree can help you develop your future pathways. Politics and international relations is luckily an extremely versatile degree, which allows you to go into a wide range of very diverse work pathways. Politics and international relations graduates will typically work in various different sectors, including media and public relations, NGOs and think tanks, teaching and research, the civil service, business, and marketing. Our own politics and international relations graduates have gone on to work in public relations, business analysis, education, and some have gone on to further their studies with MAs from King's College and SOAS. So, why study politics and international relations at the University of Hertfordshire? We're a young and ambitious team of researchers offering you an innovative research led program with a personal learning experience and plenty of individual study and skills support. We're committed to developing your skills for employability through flexible module choice for area specialism, skill focus, and internship opportunities. To find out more about our program, visit our website. You can also see what the research group and each individual lecturer is up to on our research group webpage and on Twitter. If you have specific questions, you can email either myself or Hannah Richter as the subject heads, and we look forward to hearing from you. And now let's spend some time together talking about politics. In the next few slides, myself and my colleagues will give you a bit of a taster of what it means to use politics and international relations as a discipline to think through the problems and issues of our time, and we'll do that by unpacking the current coronavirus crisis.
The outbreak of the coronavirus disease, whose root causes are still uncertain or unclear, was first identified in the city of Wuhan in China in December 2019. Despite draconian measures by China and neighboring countries such as South Korea, the virus rapidly spread across the world, which took the World Health Organization to formally recognize this worldwide issue, if you want, a pandemic. Now, beyond blatant health consequences and dreadful human losses, at the time of preparing this video, the number of total world deaths has escalated up to 50,000 and over a million of infected people. The pandemic has interrupted our routinary everydayness. So, in other words, the virus has dramatically affected the way humans stay in the world. From the daily struggles of individuals, families, neighborhoods, and communities which have to address affairs like social distancing, food provision, or childcare, to the planetary wide disruption of international trade, world traveling, or massive cultural gatherings. The following slides critically unpack and examine the messy scope and the implications of the current crisis.
Thanks, Ignacy. As of 1st of April 2020, there have been positive tests for the COVID-19 virus in 201 countries. This is a truly global crisis that requires a collective, coordinated international response. But how can such an effort be managed and organised? There is, after all, no world government. Instead, we have a collection of independent countries which we call states. Now, states are the core decision makers in global politics, the only entities able to resolve international crises. To help resolve global issues, states create what we call institutions, such as the World Health Organization or the WHO. The WHO offers expert advice on how to manage and resolve global health issues. The WHO acts as a forum for states to coordinate policies with one another. And the WHO allows states to collaborate with one another as they are in the current solidarity trial. But the implementation of any policies rests solely in the hands of states. This explains why we have seen such a disparity in policy responses. Testing, timeframes, travel bans, social distancing, and lockdown approaches have all been different. So overall, what does the COVID-19 pandemic tell us about politics at the global level? It has shown us how difficult it is to coordinate, manage, and organise responses to global crises, clearly highlighting the limits of the current global governance framework. Successfully resolving the COVID-19 pandemic will be determined by the actions of over 100 individual governments. But a state cannot resolve the pandemic individually. There needs to be some form of unified, coherent response which has thus far been missing. Instead, we have a series of competing responses with little noticeable coordination or consistency. Next, we pass over to Dr. Hammer Richter to discuss the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on local politics.
The coronavirus pandemic changes and challenges national politics in many ways. While national governments are still the ones that implement policies, in the crisis they rely heavily on expert scientific advisors to understand which actions they are actually supposed to implement. Some political theorists understand this close link between politics and medicine as an indicator that power is becoming increasingly biopolitical. What does this mean? This term includes the Greek word for life, bios, so it means that life and health, the life and health of a population, is increasingly becoming a matter of political governance. How the coronavirus crisis can be governed, for example, depends on the provision of healthcare in a country as one dimension of such biopolitics. The extremely quick spread and high number of cases in the US, if we compare it to Europe, suggests that a public healthcare system is better able to manage and tackle the crisis and avoid that prevention and medication can only reach one part of the population. However, cases from Europe suggest that systematic underfunding of public healthcare also creates issues, for example, the lack of available tests and protective gear for NHS workers in the UK. Now, if you think coronavirus governance, the first thing that probably comes to your mind is the lockdown, which is an example of emergency legislation passed to fight the spread of the virus. In legal terms, what is happening here is that the crisis creates a state of exception where measures can be taken that would normally not be legal. For example, the police has special powers to enforce the lockdown. In some countries, the army is used on the inside. The state can repurpose buildings, patient confidentiality is suspended, and so forth. Some political theorists worry that exceptional state powers can be misused to extend surveillance and control and can thereby undermine citizen freedom. Potentially, we can see this at the moment in Hungary, where the right-wing Orban government passed legislation which allows it to bypass parliament and rule by decree. What we, however, can see in many countries is that exceptional circumstances increase support for national governments. Because we usually find this phenomenon during times of war, it is sometimes in the literature called rallying round the flag. But we can see this in the coronavirus crisis as well. For example, in Italy, approval for the current government under Giuseppe Conte increased from 44% to 70% between February and March, and the coronavirus crisis also affected how the public sees Boris Johnson in the UK. While this was mainly in an unfavourable light before the crisis, it is now mainly in a favourable light, and more than 90% of the population supported the Johnson government's lockdown measures. Now, a final important dimension of the pandemic as a national political challenge is its economic impact. In the short term, governments are providing financial packages of loans, aids and grants mainly for businesses, but not just, to soften the economic impact of closures and cancellations. This package currently stands at 350 billion in the UK, so a massive financial impact. One interesting point to note here is that these measures partially cross political lines. The tax-funded support for renters, self-employed citizens, unemployed, so vulnerable citizens offered by the current government would normally be more on the lines of labour, but in this case, in this crisis, transcends political lines.
Okay, so in light of what we discussed earlier, what we're going to do now is to have a little bit of a general group reflection on some of the themes that emerge if you think about the current pandemic through the lenses of politics and international relations. So without further ado, Ben, if you can take it from here.
Okay, so the COVID-19 pandemic is a clear example of what I would call the globalization paradox. So it shows us how local factors, such as the dietary habits of the elites and upper classes in China, can have truly global consequences. But also at the same time, it shows us that global events, such as a worldwide pandemic, can have local consequences, including the closure of schools and the delivery of local amenities.
Thank you, Ben. Hannah.
All right. So what I would like to point out is that the crisis can indeed make states stronger. And we've seen this in the coronavirus pandemic as well. On the one hand, more authoritarian systems such as Hungary, but also Poland, the governments have tried to instrumentalize the crisis to extend their control, and quite successfully so. But even in more fully democratic systems such as the UK's, what we've seen is that political patterns have shifted, and that can have unintended consequences. Like when you change the pattern on one side of the Rubik's Cube, other patterns change as well. So, for example, the government has more powers to control citizens through executive powers, the police, through data surveillance. And now the citizens accept this more because of the exceptional circumstances. And how this will change the pattern of democratic politics, we won't quite know until much further down the line. Ignacy.
So, in vain with this line of argumentation, and maybe as a wrap up, whenever we think of all these all-encompassing concepts such as history, progress, even the world, it is never in an abstract or unsituated manner. The referential point is always the human, right? So it's not any history the one we think of, but it's the human history, it's the human progress, it's even the human world, right? So phenomena like the coronavirus pandemic compromises this unconscious and rather hubristic human-centered bias. We come to learn that our form of being and becoming in this planet is always the result of this unpredictable, as Hannah was mentioning, these unpredictable political negotiations with further non-human ecologies. And as a final point, maybe realizing this might unleash a sense of modesty in the human, which seems necessary to undo this anthropocentric character of liberal democracy.
Thank you, Ignacy. And actually, what that makes me think is that this human centrism also defines the way in which what we consider to be the most common and commonly understood unit for doing politics and doing international relations, which is the state, has actually responded to the crisis at the moment. At the moment, states have actually reacted to this in a very militaristic way, as if the virus was actually another state actor that was invading and crossing the boundaries. But what we know, of course, is that the virus at the moment is not necessarily considering the boundaries that we humans have imposed to understand and to relate to the world. What we also know is that waging war against the virus and waging war in general is not necessarily going to lead you to understand the virus scientifically better or invest more in healthcare or look after the vulnerable, because traditionally waging war, whether or not we see it through the sort of rosy lenses of, looking at war as a cool thing or looking at war as a valuable and morally right thing to do, is a messy thing. It is a thing that has unintended consequences, including things like sexism, racism, and, as Hannah was saying, further retrenchment into autocracy. All of this is to say that, as Ignacy was saying, that the current pandemic is actually opening up our world, is opening up our ways of thinking about boundaries, about borders, about relations, about local, global, about personal liberties and communal liberties as well. And it is this which makes the current crisis, whilst very hard to live through personally, a really interesting thing to think through and to allow us for us to think about the world in a different way. So with that in mind, these are some of the thoughts that hopefully will make you look at the pandemic through a politics and international relations lens. And we look forward to discussing this and many more topics in class, hopefully in the near future. So thank you and goodbye.